It's episode 483 of the Clive Barker Podcast. Ryan and Jose review Hellraiser release and cast news, some Nightbreed appearance news, plus we talk about the recent Candyman true crime podcast, the latest Rue Morgue Barker interview, and the Fathom Events Hellraiser screening. This is the Clive Barker Podcast, where longtime fans Ryan and Jose interview guests, bring you the news, and take deep dives into Barker-related stuff. This episode is sponsored by Don Bertram's Celebrate Imagination. Don Bertram is a longtime friend of Clive and advocate of his art, but Don's unique and inspiring paintings are for sale, and over 50% of the proceeds go to the Arts and Medicine program at the Texas Children's Cancer Center. There's even a paver in Washington, D.C. representing Celebrate Imagination. We're thrilled that this worthy cause is sponsoring our podcast again this year, and we hope that you'll consider looking over his Pinterest page and commissioning a painting of your own. For commissions, Don requires no money down, and there will be no obligation on your part. You can also head over to the Etsy shop to buy one of his books, like A Chimney Sweep's Tale, Celebrate Imagination, or The Imaginaries. Follow the link in the show notes, or click on the side banner, and let's see what's new with Don Bertram today. Most recently, you can find Hummer 3 and The Conversation 3 on Facebook. Links are in our show notes. Also, take a look at his newest video on YouTube detailing Best Cutler Gallery prints, recently made public from our Patreon. Let's welcome our other sponsor, Ed Martinez, and his YouTube channel. Lots of great special effects videos and Barker-related content. What's the latest from Ed? There's a new video on Ed Martinez's YouTube channel called Clive Barker 1992 Fangoria Weekend of Horrors. So go check that out. It's got a really good Q&A with Clive Barker, talking about the imaginative process and stuff. Hey, if you want to help us out, support us on Patreon at patreon.com/BarkerCast589. Our subscribers will get exclusive access to content not available anywhere else, like our Collector's Corner video series, rare Barker videos, and early behind-the-scenes stuff. Our supporters get to help us choose episode topics and even join us on the podcast. Our supporters also get access to the exclusive channel in our Discord server. We'll be forever grateful if you consider helping us out and subscribing to our Patreon. We owe everything to this circle of magicians, so let's give a shout out to our Patreon supporters and see what's new on Patreon. Thanks to David Anderson, Eric Vanderholt, Daniel Elvin, Amanda Stewart, Bradley Gartz, Marcus, and our returning sponsor Don Bertram Celebrate Imagination, and our new sponsor Ed Martinez's YouTube channel. Thank you. Recently, our patrons can find on the Patreon site a feature about Hellraiser, the Hellraiser game by Color Dreams That Never Happened by Jose. And also Ed Martinez's video of a 1993 signing at San Diego Comic-Con Q&A. All right, well, welcome. This is episode 483 of the Clive Barker Podcast. And good afternoon, Jose, or good evening. How's it going?
Hi, Ryan. Everything's good over here. Good news. I recently had some good news because I was in between jobs recently, but looks like I've got another job. And,
yeah.
I'm back, baby. Yeah, no, I start on March. I start in March. So that's going to be, I still have a few weeks of fun employment. Yay.
Oh, yeah. So this episode today, we're talking, we've got a bunch of news, mainly Hellraiser-related news, and a bunch of other stuff, but also we have some discussion topics that I didn't realize how popular this podcast was, right? It's called Candyman, The True Story of the Bathroom Mirror Murder. And so it's basically relating Candyman and the true story of what happened with the person coming in through the mirror to kill someone. And so it's a 6-part, true crime documentary, but it's also put out by 48 Hours, which is so it's kind of related to a network news channel, I think, right?
Yeah, it's put out under CBS News.
Yeah.
Dometi Pongo is the host of this 6-episode limited series.
And then, of course, Rue Morgue, number 222, which is like a good third of the magazine is all Clive Barker related stuff. And it's got a Clive Barker painting on the cover. Really cool. If you guys have like a a bookstore where you can get that. I got mine at Barnes & Noble. I recommend getting out there and getting one.
Yeah, there's at least 8 pages in the whole magazine about Clive Barker and his artwork.
Yeah, so anyway, we'll get into that stuff. And then we'll talk about the Fathom Events Hellraiser screening that you went to. Yeah. But first of all, and this is a big one, right? This is something that I've been sort of harping on every time we talk about Hellraiser 2022. There is a Blu-ray, a 4K Blu-ray teased by a company called Turbine in Germany.
That's right. So how did you find out about this?
Somebody posted it in the Hellbound web on Facebook and in Occupy Midian. Yeah.
So it looks like I'm looking at the Turbine Facebook page now, and it's a home entertainment company from 2004, and looks like they've been putting out some great steel books and Blu-rays and 3D Blu-rays and stuff like that. So they did tease. There's no details on this release, right? So the only thing they did is that they put a image of the Hellraiser poster with Jamie Clayton as Pinhead.
Yeah.
And then they put a bunch of hashtags on it saying Hellraiser 2022, hashtag Steelbook, hashtag Mediabook, hashtag Ultra HD Blu-ray. So that kind of gives us an idea that this will be a Steelbook Ultra HD Blu-ray.
So the cool thing about being a 4K Blu-ray is those aren't region coded. Mm-hmm. So we should be able to buy it and play it here in the United States as long as they'll ship it to us.
Yeah, that'd be terrific.
And probably the German subtitles would be selectable. I mean, they always are nowadays. Yeah. So I'm hoping, and we were talking to Ed Martinez about this, right? I'm hoping that we can get our commentary on there.
Yeah, that would be good if it's still being prepared for that. That could be definitely another track to add. That would be terrific. Have you seen their website, the Turbine website?
A little bit. There was a lot of stuff in German. Ed had asked me if I could look at it and see if I could find the Hellraiser on there, and I couldn't find it.
It's not yet. But there's a bunch of Hellraiser stuff on it from other movies, especially Hellraiser Judgment. They have multiple covers for that one. I don't know if you noticed that. Yeah.
No, I didn't.
They have like 3 different cool as hell covers for Hellraiser Judgment. Media Books cover A, B, and C in Ultra HD Blu-rays. They've got, and they even have like a full set pack that comes with all 3 covers. Like, check it out. Search Hellraiser in the turbine-shop.de, and you will see all of the stuff they have. They have a 4K Blu-ray disc edition of Hellraiser Trilogy. Then they have like a few packages for the Hellraiser Judgment movie, from the normal edition with that side picture of Pinhead to these 2 different 3 cover sets that they made for it. Really, really awesome.
Yeah. I'm guessing it's coming out in Germany because, in Europe, there's no such thing as Hulu. For them, it was on Disney Plus for a short time. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it's still there or not, but yeah, I mean, I think that's why it's not as readily available as it is in the U.S.
Yeah, like you said, it's just in the United States and Puerto Rico, and some U.S. military bases I found when I Googled that. So maybe that's why they're releasing it like that in Europe. But of course, like you said, if it's a non-region coded 4K Blu-ray, people were just going to snatch that up. So Turbine's going to make a killing.
Yeah, and they need to put Ed Martinez's interviews with SFX creators and stuff from Hellraiser 2022.
Absolutely, I agree with that. And our commentary, if that goes well, but let's see what happens. Yeah. I don't know what stage they're at in terms of preparing the disc and collecting materials to put in it and what kind of license that would entail.
We'll see if we can get a hold of them.
Because so far, the only other edition that existed was that Hellraiser 2022 DVD on Region B, I believe. And then there was an Australian DVD as well.
And why, it's like it's a movie that broadcasts in 4K on Hulu. And why are they putting it on DVD?
Yeah, I don't know. It's like, still, that format is so popular. I mean, the DVD format is going to be as popular as... I don't know. It's probably one of the most successful formats ever, right?
I think it's kind of the new VHS now.
Yeah.
And then, of course, speaking of more Hellraiser, Ed Martinez was showing us this was just a couple of days ago, a friend of his named Clint Jarrett.
Yeah, this is a little news from the Reef. Ed couldn't be with us today, but he sent us this little message saying that, hey, this is a report from a very special fan who went out of his way to meet up with Clive at one of his last personal appearances. And here's a little write-up that Ed and Nina gave us to read. So I'm going to read that a little bit. It says, a true pinball wizard is making a Hellraiser pinball machine. And then, like you said, Clint Jarrett, pinball enthusiast who has built one-of-a-kind Hellraiser pinball machine. Still a work in progress. However, it looks amazing already. Clint says that the game was originally a Gottlieb 1982 Devil's Dare. I don't know if you ever played that one. Are you a pinball player, Ryan?
I like pinball as much as anybody, but I'm not like an expert or anything.
I'm going to have to look into what the original machine was. He said he liked the design of the cabinet and the sound integration, and he's completely refurbished it and customized it into a Hellraiser pinball game. He recently took this to the convention Spooky Empire in Orlando, Florida in November of last year. And there he got to meet Simon Bamford, Nicholas Vince, and Craig Sheffer from Nightbreed. And there he also met Clive Barker, and Clive signed the pinball machine for him. It has a puzzle box in the center where if the player does the appropriate things, it'll move and create the star shape. Yeah. So that's super cool.
Did you see the video of that? So like the ball went underneath and then the box, like the center lifts up and then twists 45 degrees and goes back down again.
That's so cool. And I think
it was really cool. And it had Doug Bradley quotes in there playing when the like ball went a certain direction. And there was a little tiny TV set that was playing video. It was kind of hard to see what it was playing, but that was really cool.
And so, as usual, these pinball machines nowadays all have those decorative elements, and some of them have little figurines. So in this one, the figures are comprised of commercial and unique items. He's got the pinhead from the NECA Hellraiser 3, the 12-inch figure. He's got Butterball, Chatter, and the Chatter Beast from NECA Series 1 and 2. And then he's got a mini engineer that was handmade by an artist. Ed still had the original kit, and he provided that to Clint so he could paint it and put it in the machine. And the Pillar of Souls, which rotates during the game. This guy really went all out on this stuff.
Yeah, it's amazing.
He got that one, the pillar, through Etsy, and it's a custom-sized 3D print. The miniature hospital television was done by Neil Henry, and the working lament configuration was designed and built by Clint Jarrett himself. So he's got some etchings for the box panels that were provided by a hobbyist, the HellraiserPuzzlebox.com, and the art on the playfield and back glass was done by Brian Allen from Flyland Designs, and the cabinet art was done by an artist in the UK called NeilGrazerGraphics.com. Yeah. And so what a pinball wizard that guy is, right? I mean, those pictures are amazing. And there's a picture of Clive next to it as well. Way to go, Clint. That's really good. It's a picture of Clive really sitting in a chair, like a throne, Game of Thrones throne that Clive is sitting next to Craig Sheffer. And then, of course, Simon Bamford on one side and Nicholas Vince on the other. And wow, that's so cool. One of a kind thing, dude. People don't do this stuff anymore. This is amazing.
Yeah, it was really cool. Yeah, I was just super impressed by those. I mean, they were really short little pictures or videos that Ed sent over for us to, kind of get a feel for it. But, I'm hoping that we get like a longer video of it, maybe from the owner or something. That would be pretty neat.
Yeah. Once he's done with that, I'm sure he's going to want to put that on YouTube to share with other people so we can all drool over it.
Yeah. And then this is one that you had brought, Cine-Excess magazine, right? Or website, I guess it is, right? Raising Hell, Demons, Darkness, and the Abject.
Sure. Yeah, that's a UK festival about cinema. They have a website, and usually they put out this online publication in this case. They're on issue number 6. And like you said, it's called Raising Hell, Demons, Darkness, and the Abject. So it's got a lot of stuff in it. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to go through. I myself have not seen everything yet because we just heard about this by a post that I saw from Nicholas Vince. I think I actually gave you this link today for you to check out as well. Yeah.
So I read the foreword by Barbie Wilde, which is pretty cool. Mainly talking about what draws us to horror and the erotic elements and stuff like that. And And
when she went into audition for Hellraiser 2.
Yeah. There was an interview with Doug Bradley that it's interesting because I've also been trying to catch up on our podcast, and I'm on episode 303, which is when we interviewed Doug Bradley.
Yeah.
So listening to, it's like, I got to stop listening to Doug Bradley so I can listen to Doug Bradley. And so I put that one on, and it kind of annoyed me a little bit because I don't know, if you watched it, that guy talked over Doug Bradley so much.
It does have a lot of interruptions in it, especially at the beginning. And there's some weird background noise that happens.
Towards the end, there's like a whole bunch of people talking and stuff behind the interviewer guy.
It happens that way. I mean, sometimes conditions are not ideal. I'm not sure if he looked like he wasn't really in his own house, the interviewer. He looked like he was in a basement somewhere.
It was strange.
But it was an interesting interview.
The questions were also kind of disappointing to me. I mean, like, when did you know that Pinhead was going to be an icon? It's like, how many times has he been asked that?
That's right. He's like, well, I thought we were going to make a little splash. I was like, I've heard him say that before. Yeah. So, I mean, these are soft interviews, I guess. I don't want to damn it with faint praise, but sometimes, they go for the stuff that for new people who aren't aware of it, you always got to bring in those old hits. In a podcast show, for example, like ours, we can get into the more deep and obscure stuff because we know that our listeners are already pretty versed in all of that stuff that we're discussing.
We can drag it out for as long as the person we're interviewing can stand. And in this case, it was only 20 minutes, right? Ours was like 2 hours almost.
Yeah, there was a particular question that I thought was funny. It's like, when was the last time that you actually saw the movie with an audience, like beginning to end? And he's like, beginning to end, like the whole thing? Yeah. I don't know. It's like, because, I mean, this is work for him, I mean.
Right.
I can understand why an actor won't just sit down and watch the movie again, because he's watched the movie already. He's been part of the movie. He's lived it. He had to do multiple takes of every scene. So
how many more times are you going to listen to this episode after we get it published?
Well, probably maybe once, if that. I haven't listened back to some of the episodes that we've done, probably more than half of them. So it's funny because like I don't know as much about the movie as the people who watch it 600 times, which is I feel attacked, but I feel seen as well. But yeah, of course, the actors are in the movie, but they're not fans of the movie that they're in. I think he also says something like, I don't really like to watch myself, which is something that happens with a lot of actors.
Yeah, but he did backpedal that a little bit, and he said, but also watching himself as Pinhead is not really like watching himself. It is like another character. It's like somebody else. So he can kind of detach from that a little bit.
I can understand that.
Yeah.
And then there's also an interview with Nicholas Vince, and they go through a lot of detail about especially his experience making the documentary I Am Monsters that was based on his one-man show. So there's a lot of talk about that.
And I bought that, and I still have it wrapped in plastic. I haven't watched it yet because I plan on us setting aside a time to maybe go over it on the podcast, and maybe we can have Nicholas Vince back on or not. Up to him. But either way, you and I can talk about it. And so I haven't watched it yet, and so I didn't watch that whole interview because I didn't want it to get all spoiled.
Sure. But then they also go into other stuff like Hellraiser and why is it important. And they also discuss like his childhood and growing up under the Thatcher years and Clause 28, I think,
which is also probably stuff that's covered by the I Am Monsters
documentary. Yeah, that's right. But it's a pretty in-depth interview. It's also about 24 minutes. And that one was fairly well conducted, I thought. Very, very interesting. Mm-hmm. I also want to get the I Am Monsters documentary. I think, am I right? Is that like a 500 Blu-ray edition that he did?
I don't remember if it's numbered. I know I got it from his website, and there was an option to get it autographed.
Oh, and did you get that autographed?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I got to get that too. I got to jump on that. Cine-Excess, there's a lot of stuff to go through.
Right.
A lot of good stuff, and a lot of stuff that might put you on the path to some real cool new things that you might not have heard of before. So it's very academic. There's a lot of essays and a lot of interviews. I do recommend you guys check that out. We'll put a link in the show notes.
This is a much smaller thing, but Peter Atkins shared a little mini documentary that was, one of those kind of
So this is from Marvelous Videos channel on YouTube. It was put out 6 days ago.
It's like a little 8.5 minute video explaining the origin of Barbie from Hellraiser 3.
Yeah. So, it's at this point, it still has less than 6,000 views. So go ahead and check it out. I did go through the whole video and found that it tackled a lot of interesting information for people who might want to know more about one of our favorite Hellraiser, Barbie Cenobite. And it goes in depth, right? It talks about a Cenobite creation or a pseudo Cenobite.
And they explain what is a pseudo Cenobite. Well, pseudo means false.
Yeah. Both roles were played by Peter Atkins. They talk about his alter ego that comes from, I believe, a story called Children of Fire that was written by Peter Atkins. Mm-hmm. They talk about Pinhead's role in creating Barbie, comic adaptations that...
Yeah, because they talk about in the Hellraiser epic comics that there's a character named Atkins.
Right. Oh, yeah, that's right. Well, that's different, yeah. They mentioned that he was originally a bartender. There's a story about his alter ego. They give out the name of the bartender and stuff. Very, very cool little documentary. It's nice to see people still bringing up these characters from older movies and putting them out there. So that I think that's really fun. And it's always great to see someone give Peter Atkins some kudos.
Yeah. Well, and he was kind of excited to see his Cenobite character that he doesn't get talked about as much as Pinhead or the Chatterer. Get its own video, which is kind of neat.
Rick the bartender.
Yeah.
Was it Rick Blackstone or something? I forgot the name. Whatever.
Did he have a last name?
I think it's just Rick. No, I think it's just Rick. Yeah.
So this is special thanks to someone on Reddit, UroshUchiha on Reddit, shared that GOG has a series of video games that you can vote on which ones that they should restore and make available. And so Jericho, Clive Barker's Jericho, is on that list. So it's called a Dreamlist. So you can go over there and vote. And if it gets enough votes, maybe they'll look into it. I don't know what it'll cost to get the rights to do that, to make it released more or less in perpetuity, to be at least playable again.
Interesting. I do see that at this point it's got like 4,170 votes. It says vote to bring this game to GOG and help preserve it. Yeah. I thought that this game is actually on GOG.
No, it was Undying that's on there.
Undying. That's right. You're right. Oh, that would be great. Yeah, let's see if we can get this one to... These old games, sometimes they don't really work very well with the new Windows. And even if you have the... And nowadays, computers are starting to lose their optical drives. So it's kind of impossible now to install it in a Windows 10 machine unless you use some patches and...
DOSBox or something.
Bootlegged things that you can find on the internet, which are not supposed to be used on personal computers. But that would be good. Let's vote for that. I'm going to log into my Good Old Games account and I'm going to go and vote on it.
Yeah, and we might also separately, put some links on social media just to kind of boost it a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
We just mentioned briefly about Dark Delicacies was going to be closing, but Del Howison has a book. Clive Barker does the introduction on it. It looks like a book of short stories.
That's good.
What fresh hell is this?
Step into the twisted mind of Del Howison with this unflinching collection of dark tales. He posted about it on his own page, right? He changed his cover image to the full cover image. Pre-sales to start soon. That's all I have here. Everybody's like asking him, like, "Hey, when is this coming out? When is this coming out?"
Yeah. Well, and so when they have that, so Dark Delicacies is going to be closing, right? And they're open until the end of March. They're going to have that party, and Clive Barker, he said, would be there. And so maybe Del and Clive will sign this book at that. I'm considering if I'd want to go to that. I mean, I want to go, but I'm considering if I could make that work.
Right. And these are stories written by Del Howison himself, right? It says here, drawing on his rich life experiences from being baptized in a river and attending a private Christian college to his ownership of the famed horror bookstore Dark Delicacies, Howison crafts tales that delve into the darkest corners of the human soul. I'm reading from the back of the book. He's been publishing so much stuff and has been selling so many books, and now he's got some stories coming out. That's exciting.
Yeah. And one more Dark Delicacies type news. They're selling surprise boxes, they call them. Not mystery boxes. That's the puzzle box. Surprise boxes. So there are these flat rate USPS boxes, and each one has a hardback, a trade paperback, and 2 more items worth $40.
Nice.
Or I think you pay $40. They're probably worth more. He says they'll be available on the website. I think he says that it is now, but I couldn't find it on there when I was setting up this episode notes.
Yeah, it looks like it's in the website. It's in the part of the store that says signings. So if you go to that part, on the top, you see home, signings, store hours. So if you click on signings, it's already listed there.
Box. Sold out
surprise
already.
Box. Wow. Okay. Well, there we go.
Okay. Man, this has only been on there for like 2 days. We didn't even hardly get to our recording time before that was sold out already.
Yeah. Well, I hope everybody got good stuff, and tell us what you got if you got any cool signed stuff.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of it for the news, and so we can get into our discussion.
It's literally not 2 days. I mean, it says here they posted this yesterday at 5 p.m. So as we're recording this, it's just been like 27 hours since he posted it, and it's sold out.
Well, and there's a lot of people out there that really love Dark Delicacies and want to support them.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. The Creature Feature Weekend is going to have Ann Bobby and Craig Sheffer.
That's in Pennsylvania, I believe.
Yes.
Weekend.
Right. It's going to be in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. CreatureFeatureWeekend.com.
March 28th through the 30th that weekend.
Yep. And they're going to have, another connection here with Peter Atkins. It's Andrew Divoff that played the Wishmaster, is also going to be present there. So you're going to have a lot of people from your favorite movies like Andrew Divoff, Tim Capello, the sax guy from the Lost Boys movie. The saxophone guy.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Ann Bobby, Craig Sheffer, Charles Band is going to be there. A lot more people. So go ahead and check it out and start blocking out your weekend of March 28th through the 30th.
Oh, the guy in Dawn of the Dead who stepped up on the box and got his head cut off by the helicopter blade.
Yeah.
He's going to be there.
Oh, yeah. With the gigantic head, right? That gets chopped off.
His name is Jim Crut.
Yep. Is going to be doing a representative photo op. Okay, cool. Wow. People from Tremors, people from Beetlejuice, like the guy who played the shrunken head guy.
Yeah.
That's going to be cool.
Pretty cool. So Candyman, the true story behind the bathroom mirror murder. I guess my first impression of this was that it was so produced, right? It almost felt like a reality show because they would play little clips from things that you weren't even going to hear until like episodes later.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's to be expected when it's put out by a studio like this, under 48 hours in CBS. It's going to be produced stuff. It's not so much off the cuff like we do it. Right. But I thought it was very, very polished, very informative. There was a lot of stuff, like you said. Some transcripts were dramatized for effect, and some stuff like recordings of calls that were already destroyed in the meantime. Because this took place a long time ago, right? This was like 1987?
So
1987, right. Yeah. So this happened back in 1987.
The first episode, Left High and Dry, is kind of about how Ruthie Mae McCoy called for help when someone was smashing through her mirror and nobody came. they didn't take her seriously. They didn't get there. And when they finally did get there, the superintendent or whatever of the building gave them a key that didn't work, and they didn't want to smash the door in because they thought they might be liable, and so they left and came back later. And it's all this whole big thing about could they have saved her life, and nobody really knows, if they had actually just gone in when they were supposed to.
As you go along through the episodes, like you said, this has 6 episodes, you will find more information about the terrible, terrible murder that happened. The police was eventually found that by the judge after this went to court. They did criticize the cops that responded to the call because neighbors had reported gunshots and stuff. It would have made sense for them to actually do their due diligence and try to open the apartment door. And then it's like the blame game, like, well, if we knock down the door, who's going to pay for it? Like you said, I feel like the cops didn't do their due diligence when they came there. As you hear more, of course, she had friends that lived in the building and people that she relied and interacted with every day. And, of course, her absence became a point of high concern, right?
Yeah. So, and there was also this issue of she had previously had mental issues. And then there was the question of, did the police not take her seriously? Because what she's saying does sound a little preposterous about somebody smashing through her bathroom mirror. Right. So, and of course, at this point, everybody knows what we're going to say. But back in the day, some of these old projects, they were cutting corners everywhere. And they were just, in this kind of construction, they didn't want to have to crack into the walls if there was a plumbing issue. And there were lots of plumbing issues. They often, these projects their elevators would stop working or get disconnected. And people would have to go up many flights of stairs. And toilets would get backed up and people would just stop using them because it would take a month before someone would come in and fix that toilet from the supervisor that managed those buildings. It's clear that these people were neglected. This is a community that was neglected because they were poor. And one of the things that they did to save money on any sort of possible repairs in the future was, instead of having the pipes go through the wall, they made it so that the walls between the bathrooms of each apartment, they actually were open, and then they would just put the pharmacy cabinets on either side. And that way, if there was any issue, the plumber would just come in, pull out the cabinet and see if he could access the pipes without having to open a hole in the wall and then fix the hole with drywall or plaster. Yeah. So that's why they did it, I think. At least that was the idea that I got out of it. Yeah. But of course, this was a major security risk because that meant that if bad elements were on an apartment next to yours, if they really wanted to, they could just start pulling out the pharmacy cabinet and make their way into your apartment to rob stuff. And I think that ended up being what happened, right? Yeah, she was shot by the people that came through. Yeah, they shot her 4 times. Yeah. I think she was shot once in the arm, twice in the chest, 1 in the leg. And according to the coroner, it looks like she had her pulmonary artery severed. And so she probably didn't survive for long because she probably bled out pretty quickly. Yeah. But in any case, there was a lot of negligence here. Even if the cops couldn't have come in time to save her, even if she was already dead, they should have done their due diligence. The company that managed the building should have done more to keep the building secure and the tenants secure in that building, and they didn't. Right, and episode 2 is kind of about that. I mean, and you brought up most of what was in episode 2 about the design and, why they designed it the way they did and why that wasn't safe. And but they never, even after this murder happened, they never went in and corrected it either. Right, and according to what there was a reporter, right, a guy called Stephen Bogira. Yeah. And I think he ended up talking to a lot of people at the time in those projects because he kind of did a lot of articles about life in the projects. Yeah. And I actually found the Chicago publication that. Oh, really? I found the link to the Chicago Reader article that said cause of death. Who killed Ruthie Mae McCoy? A bullet in the chest or life in the projects? Yeah. I can add that to the show notes.
This was published on,
and we find out through the course of this podcast that Bernard Rose just happened to be in a waiting room or somewhere where that particular newspaper was there and that headline, and he grabbed it and he read it, and that's how it got into the Candyman movie.
Yes, but also I think at the time he just read about it, but he didn't really make the association. I think what had really happened was when he actually was looking for locations, and he decided to go to Chicago because he loved the architecture there and stuff. Mm-hmm. You would contact some people from the town, and they would take you on a tour to scout some locations. And when he did that, he wanted to see the project, so they took him to Cabrini Green. It's kind of funny to hear him mention how the people from the council and the people and the police officers seem to have this tension when they went to visit Cabrini Green, right? That like they were kind of scared of going there because they said, well, there's like gang activity and stuff like that. And he kind of felt like it was not from the people that were there. They didn't have fear about living there, or he didn't feel that fear coming from them, but he felt the fear from the people outside the community coming in, and he wanted to tap in on that. And then eventually he found a lady there who was friends with Ruthie Mae McCoy, or knew a lot about what happened. And she's the one who kind of gave him a rundown on what happened to Ruthie Mae and the whole story, right? So he even hired her as a consultant for the Candyman movie.
So then episode 3 is all about these people that were next door that were brought in by the police and accused of the murder. It was like it's like two guys. One of them, I think, was a teenager.
That's right.
By the time of the trial, they couldn't get there was one person who told the story one way and then completely changed it by the time they got to trial.
Right. So eventually they arrested 2 suspects. Ruthie Mae McCoy's apartment was number 1109 and it was connected to 1108, which apparently had young people going in and out of it all the time. And
vacant apartment.
They just hung out there and did drugs or did this and that. And so the 2 suspects they arrested were Edward Turner, 19, and John Hondras, 22. Mm-hmm. So at the time, they were charged with murder, home invasion, armed robbery, and residential burglary. And the guy who gave the statement the day they found McCoy's body was a guy called Tim Brown. And he said that he had seen he named 2 people that he saw going in and out of the apartment. And so when that went to trial and they wanted to bring him in with his statement, he decided to change his story at the time, right? So then he said, oh, I know it was not that other guy. It was another guy as well. And so he brought up another guy and he didn't want to testify. And so basically the whole trial was hinging on his testimony because they didn't really have a lot of evidence to go by, right?
Yeah.
It was one of those situations where people didn't see anything, they didn't hear anything, or if they did, they didn't want to come up and say it because then the community of Cabrini Green would know that they were snitches. And if there were bad elements that knew that they were talking to the police, they could put their lives or their family lives at risk.
So there was one episode 4 it's called Based on a True Story. And this one, I mean, it was an interview with Bernard Rose, and he asked some tough questions, which is fine. But it got to a point where they were starting to editorialize about the Candyman movie, and in a way that kind of was annoying to me. Saying that this fictional movie was sensationalizing this poor woman's murder. Bernard Rose's answer to that is that, we take things, that's what fiction is you take things from your experiences or things that you've heard about or whatever, and you incorporate them into a story, and that's what fiction is. You can't 100% make up everything. But, this criticism that he was profiting off of this murder felt really hypocritical to me on a true crime podcast. Right? I mean, that's the whole point of a true crime podcast is to make a bunch of money off of people's misery.
I hear what you're saying. I think that Bernard Rose did defend himself pretty well. I mean defend with quote marks. Even the host of the podcast admits the point that you just made, that he himself is doing a podcast about this. But one of the things that I thought Bernard Rose was on the money is that stories like this, or stories like Ruthie May, apart from the civil suit and the trial and all that, they really only get into the mainstream like consciousness through stuff like this. I mean, I think the point that he made was that he wouldn't be talking to the podcast host nowadays about Ruthie May if the podcast host himself had not grown up as a kid watching and fearing Candyman the movie and then finding out about Ruthie Mae McCoy. So in one sense, sure, there's always that. I mean, there's always going to be people who think you're crossing a line when you use like based on a real story. But I think that one of the things that Bernard Rose said was that this wasn't about Ruthie Mae's story. It was about Candyman. I understand the family not being happy with that.
And it uses an element. The medicine cabinet thing is an element of that. You know, that he got from that. But that's right. The murder was totally different. Yes. I mean, obviously, you know, Ruthie Mae McCoy was not killed by a man with a hook, and she was unfortunately shot by young men who were marginalized and didn't see any path to living a lawful life. I think in that sense that what he's saying made sense to me, because it's the role of cinema sometimes brings these things to the forefront in a way that I don't believe that Candyman was exploitative. I don't share that view, but you know, you got to put yourself sometimes in the shoes of like the family members and stuff. Of course, they're not going to be happy. Nobody's going to be happy to see a case like this be used as an element of a fantasy story being sensationalized. But I do agree with Bernard Rose that when you create a fiction, you create it from your experience. And that was his experience, and he ended up using that. And that in some way brought some awareness. He even goes in detail about how he, Helen's character, right? He put her arrogance in the forefront, right? He put her cluelessness in the forefront, that she just wants to make a good, exciting paper about, he was urban mythology. To point out that even though she's, in a lot of ways, she's a sympathetic character, but he was also quick to point out that this is not a person going in there to help people.
That's right.
She's going in there to write a good paper. Yeah,
in the sense, kind of exploiting the situation.
And for that reason, that made it more palatable to see what ends up happening to her by the end of the movie.
That's right.
There was also some criticism of the movie based on the fact that the main character was a white woman, and they kept referring to it as parachuting in to the projects. You know,
definitely.
They use that phrase a whole bunch of times, parachuting in.
Yeah. Well, she kind of does. I mean, you know, but
not literally, but
wasn't it a producer that said something like, look, if we have to make it a white character story, otherwise nobody's going to watch it. And, unfortunately that speaks to the systemic racism that exists. And, back in the day, in the 90s, I guess they weren't ready to make something like what Nia DaCosta did.
Well, and it also contributes to the classism, right? That was kind of the heart of the story, and that this was a person that wanted to exploit their story so she could write a good paper.
It's like a suburban academic that's like they keep saying, parachuted in there to not trying to help anybody, just trying to make a exciting thing, and feeling that call of like the mystery and the. Well, one of the things that Bernard Rose says is like, if there was no crime in newspapers, would people still read them?
There was also Bernadette, who was, a person of color, but was obviously clearly not from that neighborhood. It was even more uncomfortable visiting Cabrini Green than Helen was.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good point. And of course, I have to mention that in the movie, the murder that she goes there and she hears about is about a Ruthie Jean, not Ruthie Mae. Of course, they didn't use the real name. But in the Nia DaCosta movie, little Anthony that appears in the first Candyman is Anthony McCoy.
Yeah.
Right. So there's still that reference,
so
right?
then Ruthie Jean, it's implying that she was Ruthie Jean McCoy. But of course, Bernard Rose didn't make that movie. That was Nia DaCosta. So at the same time that they were kind of criticizing the original Candyman movie for, I guess, being of its time, or, you know, being a white person in a black story. But they also put a lot of praise on Nia DaCosta's movie for not doing that. But it's also, they're decades apart.
Yes, and they also tackle the classism and the gentrification. They tackle different social issues, but it's still basically connected to the same thing, right? It's connected to the fact that communities of color are often neglected and then moved and then ignored. And then whenever it comes time to, this riverfront property is very valuable, let's go ahead and move all these people out and put them in the suburbs of the city, and let's make this in apartment buildings for like rich people. So it's still at the root of it the same kind of classism and racism.
And there was a criticism that they felt that there should have been a blurb or something at the end of the movie saying dedicated to the family of Ruthie. I
think they would have connected it more to the point that they were trying to make, that it shouldn't have been connected to it in the first place. So I'm not sure.
Right. Yeah. I guess it's I don't know, because they felt like it was exploitative. So if you're going to do that, you should at least credit them.
Well, in hindsight,
yeah, exactly. That's
you can discuss a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and if someone had suggested that to him, maybe he would have done it.
I think as a movie, it did the job of bringing awareness to what happened, which was a situation that could have just fallen to the wayside in the general public's mind if it wasn't for Candyman bringing this back up, and then, of course, people rediscovering the whole story and going in and being able to reanalyze it and find out what was at the root of that. And it's a really good article that I'm still in the middle of reading, but that what killed Ruthie Mae McCoy, a bullet in the chest or life in the projects. That's really the question, right? So, yeah, obviously the bullets that she was riddled with killed her, but at the root of that was a deeper societal issue. Right. And
there was a lot of talk about the Chicago Housing Authority, right? And they were crappy in being neglectful of all the residents there.
Of course, they wouldn't fix anything. They didn't really
change
care.
Light bulbs.
Yeah, it's all looking good on paper when you're talking about making public housing, but then it's like, where are you going to get the funding? And then I don't know where I heard this from, but there was a concern about, let's not make these apartments look too good, because then people are going to complain, why are they getting those apartments that are so nice? I think I remember that being around the time we were talking to Bernard Rose. I think I remember someone mentioning that, like some officials were like, hey, we don't want these apartments to be too nice, right? Mm-hmm. Which is ridiculous when you think about it. I just found also the obituary for Ruthie Mae McCoy, just looking through it right now. It says here, if you want to hear a little bit about who she was, it says here she was born August 24, 1915 in Berrien County, Georgia, lived over 85 years in Augusta, Georgia. It says here where she went to high school, class of 64. She was one of the founders of the Second Mount Moriah Baptist Church, where she served as a church clerk. She was a singer and a musician of church choirs in the greater Augusta area. And,
Wow, she was like 85 and they broke in there and shot her?
Yeah, they mentioned her as a grandma, right? Mrs. McCoy was preceded in death by her husband, Reverend Robert L. McCoy, Sr., her two sons, Norris P. McCoy and Robert Elsie McCoy, Jr., all four of her sisters, and her two brothers. So, wow, this is a lot of loss, a lot of grief here for this poor woman. And that was, we'll put a link to her.
And there was a moment where they asked, where the narrator guy, right, the host, asked Bernard Rose, were you thinking of Ruthie Mae McCoy when you came up with the name Ruthie Jean? And he said, oh, probably. I imagine it was in my head somewhere.
Sure. Yeah, of course.
He may not have done it consciously, but it would be an easy thing to do, I mean.
And of course, we're talking about something that was made over 30 years ago. So, I wouldn't remember stuff clearly that I did 30 years ago. But then they go like kind of halfway, they go into the whole trial, right? And I'm not going to go into the whole trial because there's a lot. And there's
and we talked about a lot of it already.
There wasn't really a great statement that would have proven beyond a shadow of a doubt who was going in and out or who did what. They did get cleared of wrongdoing, the people that went to court.
There was
Turner and Hondras.
The mother, I think, right? The mother of one of those, of the 19-year-old. Yeah. That she believed her son, but she did ask him at one point if he had done it, and then he said no. He was the guy, I think, Turner, I think was the guy who said that at one point he did see the door open, right? But then he looked in and he saw the body, but then he didn't call the police. Yeah, and then they made a thing about, when you live where we do, you don't talk to the police about anything. Right. But it's a really good show. I really recommend people listen to it. I myself finished listening to it today, and it goes into a lot of detail. It's very frustrating to listen to it sometimes because you're seeing that everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong. Yeah. And even the police that answered the report the first time, they did not do their due diligence. And it was interesting listening to that police investigator, right? Because he had a lot of really good, insightful things to say. But then when they asked him, hey, do you think those responding officers were to blame? He's like, no, they're not to blame. It's the superintendent who gave him the key that didn't work. Why did he give him a key that didn't work? Yeah. I didn't understand exactly why the door was locked. I got the idea that Turner guy went into the apartment, saw the body, and took a chair, I think, right? Took one of the rocking chairs. A chair and a TV set. And then still did not get convicted of burglary. He got absolved on that. But I didn't understand. Maybe he saw it through the pharmacy hole, the cabinet thing, because when the cops came, the door was locked, right? So maybe the door closed itself. Maybe the superintendent had the wrong key. Maybe it was just a confluence of bad things that happened or maybe he just locked the door behind him when he left. Yeah. But ultimately, listen to it if you're into the true crime podcast stuff. Yeah. It's really good, and you get to hear more about how Bernard Rose did his homework, right, when he was doing the story. And he really added a lot to The Forbidden by Clive Barker, because in The Forbidden, of course, I bring this up every time, but there's no Daniel Robitaille. It's not based on a real person that died. It was just the power of an urban myth that comes to life because a lot of people believe in it. It's very sad to listen to this stuff. It kind of bummed me out a bit because, like I said, it's a lady that got killed living in poverty. I think the motive for the invasion was the fact that she had recently come into possession of a certain kind of windfall because she needed psychiatric help. I think that she was given some financial aid for that. So they gave her a check of a bulk sum of like maybe less than $2,000. And maybe someone made her a target. Yeah, and maybe someone found out about it, or maybe someone heard somebody talk about it and that was thought to be one of the reasons why they decided to go in. She did buy herself a couple of nice things like a new coat, and I guess people would notice that stuff. So our next thing was this Rue Morgue, issue number 222. Yes. It's so nice to have another magazine with Clive Barker in the cover, right? Yeah, and Clive Barker is really prominent throughout the magazine here. We got an interview. Is it Majo? Yeah, so the article called Book of Blood article is written by Andrea Subisati, and there's an excerpt here with an interview that apparently was done by Majo Pavlovic. And he's somebody we've seen pretty recently in a lot of the Clive Barker Facebook groups. That's right. I think the biggest takeaway, or like for fans that are looking for news, right? The biggest takeaway is that in the very beginning, talking about Deep Hill as a sequel to The Thief of Always. Right. There's people in the subreddits that were getting mad at that. I remember. Yes. I saw that too. Like, I can't believe it. And like, I can't anymore.
Do you? This was a surprise for me. I'm not sure that this was mentioned before this particular article. So
I don't think so. No.
Yeah, I don't remember him ever saying that Deep Hill was going to be a sequel to The Thief of Always. So that was.
I think it's been
surprising.
reworked. There's probably been quite a few drafts and different things under the name Deep Hill.
Yeah,
but yeah, and
so
he goes into detail saying that like Lulu is going to be there, and the Hood clan, and Wendell is in it, and Harvey's in it.
Yeah, and he's writing another story. I mean, Clive, pick one and finish it. He says, I'm writing also a story about the Nazi occupation of the Channel Islands, which is called The World Without Witnesses.
Yeah.
He's writing a story about the Nativity, but told from a very strange point of view, and he's preparing the third book of the art.
So that Nativity one, would that be that dog, the one from the point of view of the dog?
Who knows?
Yeah.
At this point, it's like, I don't even know. I know he was writing that one about the crucifixion, right? That
was
Joseph of Arimathea.
From the point of view of a dog.
Yeah, and the dog is there and stuff. So at this point, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But he said here that he won't send it to the publishers, the sequel to The Thief of Always, until the end of the year. But it's a narrative that carries pretty much directly from the end of The Thief of Always.
Yeah.
And he mentions the stuff that you mentioned. I mean, I'm not going to go through everything that they talk about here because people need to buy this and read it for themselves.
Exactly.
But they talk about, it's a good introductory interview for people who are not familiar with Clive Barker, or for people who want to know what he's up to nowadays.
Yeah. If you read the opening, editor's note or whatever, that they usually have on magazines by Andrea Subasati, she's talking about what it felt like to be at Clive Barker's house and to see all these paintings. And he's like, well, what, she's like, we need some art, for this magazine. And he said, well, what would you like? And she said, send us everything.
Yes.
It's like, for anybody that's been there knows what a crazy thing that is to say. That,
that's right.
That's not possible.
I guess everything they had.
Good job. They put a lot of really cool stuff in here.
They did. They have that cool image of that. Is it called a scream? I forgot what this is called. It's that creature that has two mouths for eyes, and it's screaming in the sea of orange. And then there's stuff that looks like it's from the Aberrat. There's definitely a lot of stuff from the Aberrat here.
Yeah.
One thing that he does mention is that he's in the house right now, and
Stitchling Howl, isn't it? The one.
Oh yeah, I think you're right. You're right. So Clive does mention here that he can't really walk that well anymore. But he's got people with him like his husband Roman Barker and his best friend Paulo Lorca. And if you remember that from way back when, like maybe 10 years ago, Paulo Lorca was going to be the guy who created drawings for Barker's alphabet. Remember that?
Oh yeah, the A to Z thing, or the yes, right.
Well, it was based on Edward Gorey's The Gashly Crumb Tinies. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
That he was making some drawings for that, and then I think Clive had written little poems for the kids. And now I think the last I heard of him, he was going to edit that collection of 250 poems by Clive Barker that is going to get published by Phil and Sarah at some point.
The Presence of This Breath?
I think so. I think that might be it.
There was another name, I think, back when it was going to be done by Seraphim, by Ben Mears. And I can't remember what it was called back then.
Well, those things are always changing. That's fine. But it's nice that he's got someone to take care of him, and that he's got friends that are still helping him to complete his projects.
Yeah. There's also a cool article in here about Dark Delicacies and just explaining, Dell's point of view, the history of how they started the Dark Delicacies and why they feel like it's and how did they, when their rent got hiked up a whole bunch, and how Guillermo del Toro tweeted and got them, a bunch of money to relocate. It's a really cool article that people should check out.
The GoFundMe. In 24 hours, they filled $35,000 so he could move Dark Delicacies. I remember that. And so now it's closing really for good, or they're not just moving, right?
No, it's closing for good.
Oh, that's sad.
He wants to focus on more of writing and acting and not do the retail stuff anymore.
Cool. There's a whole full-page article about the book, What Fresh Hell Is This, that he's putting out as well. And, like I said, there's also a little gallery of Clive Barker's monsters. Mostly this is just Aberrat stuff that we've seen many times.
Yeah.
And there is The Language of Dreams and Nightmares, where he does mention that tribute to
Tony Todd.
He says, last night, writing about the beauty of our friend Tony Todd, I watched him speaking that higher language in Candyman. Nobody did it better. I wept with gratitude that Tony was there to interpret so eloquently the words his character spoke. I believe in the afterlife. I hope Tony hears us celebrating his gift. Thank you, my friends, for sharing my love for his extraordinary artist. He was with us too briefly. My love to you all, Clive.
Well, and speaking of Tony Todd, if you go all the way to the last page, they've got who is Clive Barker's most indelible character, and it's got Candyman.
Oh, there it
versus
is.
Dr. Decker from Nightbreed, and at the bottom they have pictures of Godzilla going against King Caesar.
Oh yeah, because it's that was last issue's winner, I think.
No, they're saying that they were putting Nightmare on Elm Street 3 versus Nightmare on Elm Street 4.
Oh, I see. It's just illustrating that there's a battle going on. I see.
Yeah,
they put the two kaijus
kind of a thing. Yeah,
I see. Looks like Dream Warriors won against the Dream Master. I don't know how you can put those two movies up against each other because they're basically a continuation of each other, I guess.
I can't even remember the difference between those two movies.
Yeah, the Dream Warriors is where those kids are in the psychiatric hospital, right? And then the Dream Master is where the blonde girl, she's pregnant and she fights Freddy, and then she gets the souls that are trapped inside Freddy. They all come out of his body or something.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, so yeah, I mean, I don't know who would win, Candyman or Dr. Decker.
Well, definitely Candyman. What can
I would say that
he's
too.
He's just the guy with a crazy guy with knives.
That's right. Yeah, he doesn't really make it past the movie he's in.
Candyman hypnotizes people before he kills them.
I'm still reading the magazine itself. I haven't read all of it. I said, I've been busy with job interviewing and looking for different positions. So I read the Clive Barker stuff, and I even missed that part at the end where you mentioned that there was Dr. Decker versus Candyman. But yeah, go vote for Candyman on the Rue Morgue website if that's online, because Tony Todd deserves it.
Yeah. And so kind of our last discussion piece here we've got is the Fathom Events Hellraiser screening. And so I went there and it's a little sad to see that there were, by the time the movie started, there were only 5 people that came, including me. So 4 people plus me in the theater. But it was on a Thursday, right? It's not a normal day for movies, and it's an old movie. And it seemed like the people that were there had never seen it before.
Oh, really? So that's good.
Yeah.
I hope they didn't laugh at stuff.
No, not really. I mean, people kind of quieted down once the movie started.
Oh, that's good.
They had a Hellraiser trivia quiz before the movie started. Mm-hmm. And I took screenshots of all the questions. So I took pictures with my phone of all the questions. So because you missed out, I'm gonna quiz you on the.
Okay.
All right,
sure,
so
I did. Yeah, go ahead. Let's do it.
So keep in mind, I didn't write these, and some of them are wrong. True or false? Doug Bradley, who played Pinhead initially, considered taking a minor role as one of the few furniture movers because he was concerned that acting under heavy makeup would not advance his career.
I'm going to go with true, because I've heard that story many times.
Okay, true or false? Claire Higgins, who portrayed Julia, had never seen a horror film before acting in Hellraiser.
That's tricky. I'm going to go with true.
Yeah, that was true.
Yeah, because I remember in the first Hellraiser stuff that came out that it was shot by Stephen Jones, I think, that video stuff. I think she mentions that on set.
Who was originally considered for the role of Frank Cotton before Sean Chapman was cast? We've got Oliver Smith, Andrew Robinson, Doug Bradley, or Bruce Ramsey.
That's you got me with that one. I think. Can I get the names one more time?
Oliver Smith, Andrew Robinson, Doug Bradley, or Bruce Ramsey.
I'm going to go with Andrew Robinson.
I think this one. I think was Oliver Smith.
Oh, okay. He did play Frank the Monster.
Yeah, I can't remember now. I should have taken a picture when they did the correction.
It's a weird question because Oliver Smith did play Frank and Andy Robinson did play Frank. So Bruce Ramsey obviously is from Hellraiser Bloodline. He was too young to play Frank at the time.
Yeah.
All right, next question.
Which actress played the role of Kirsty Cotton? Claire Higgins, Ashley Lawrence, Julia Blake, or Imogen Borman?
Oh, gee, I don't know. Maybe it's Ashley Lawrence.
Yeah.
That was really easy.
What unique trait did Doug Bradley bring to his portrayal of Pinhead that was not part of Clive Barker's original script? His physical stature, his ability to perform stunts, his personal experience with makeup artistry, or his calm, commanding voice?
I would say his calm, commanding voice.
That was the right answer, but it's also kind of like Clive was directing him to do that. So I don't know, where they're getting that from.
What did they say? The stature?
No, they said, no, you're right. They said his calm, commanding voice.
Okay, yeah. No, but obviously because he was a theater
it says that was not part of Clive's original script. I mean, I guess it's not in the script, but it was part of his direction.
Well, the voice that the Pinhead character has is different from the voice that the bejeweled Pin Cenobite does in the Hellbound Heart. So
the
excited, breathy voice of a little girl.
True or false? The film's original title was The Hellbound Heart, but it was changed because the studio felt it sounded too much like a romance.
Yeah, I probably going to go with true.
I think that was true, yeah.
Okay, cool.
True or false? Clive Barker had directed several feature films before helming Hellraiser.
Oh, absolutely not. Yeah, that's false. He even had to get books from the library about how to direct a movie.
Right. Clive Barker drew inspiration. This is the one that made me crazy. Because Clive Barker drew inspiration for the Cenobites' design from which of the following sources? Gothic architecture and Victorian clothing, ancient Egyptian mythology, punk fashion, Catholicism, and S&M clubs, or futuristic science fiction concepts?
Punk fashion and Gothic S&M clubs.
Yeah, actually, that was the right answer. I was thinking of a different question where they got it wrong. Maybe we'll get to that one soon. This is the one. The character of Pinhead was inspired by a character from which of Clive Barker's earlier works? Hunters in the Snow, The Forbidden, In the Hills, the Cities, or The Midnight Meat Train?
I think it's Hunters in the Snow, right?
That's what it should have been.
Okay.
They said The Midnight Meat Train was the correct answer.
No, that was...
I know.
What?
Well, also The Forbidden, if you're talking about the movie The Forbidden, right?
Sure.
The little short film had the board with the nails in it and the person being skinned and stuff.
Right. I see what you're saying. Yeah. But I think it was based on Hunters in the Snow, like the character that's in there,
what
right?
It should have been. But they said The Midnight Meat Train.
At least they got the option in there. They mentioned Hunters in the Snow. That's good.
Right. That's a pretty deep cut. And surprising that they got that wrong. What unusual method did Clive Barker use to create the visual effects of the reanimation scenes?
Is there a multiple choice?
Stop motion animation, CGI rendering, painting effects directly onto the film frame, or reverse film techniques?
Well, he did paint directly on the frame when the lightning is taking the Cenobites away, but I would say probably stop motion animation for the Frank reanimation scene.
Their answer was painting effects directly onto the film frame. So it's like they were answering a different question that they didn't ask.
Yeah, that would drive me crazy too, a little bit. Yeah, obviously. That's not about the Frank reanimation scene. There's nothing drawn in the frame in those scenes.
Right. That was the magical effects of making the Cenobites go away and stuff.
Yep. Okay, well, you know how they do this stuff. It's like a pre-show thing, and
Yep.
Who knows who did that? But at least I'm surprised that they brought Hunters in the Snow to the trivia.
Yeah.
That's a pretty deep cut, like you said.
True or false? The film was shot in France, but many of the actors' voices were dubbed to sound English to appeal to a wider audience.
Absolutely false. It was shot in Cricklewood.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. There more?
Yep. True or false? Hellraiser had a large budget for special effects, allowing for state-of-the-art visuals.
Oh, yeah. They went to ILM for that, didn't they?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They didn't have a lot of money at all. Yeah. So,
what was the approximate budget for Hellraiser? 1 million, 2.2 million, 4.3 million, or 10 million?
Oh, man. 10 million would have been great, but unfortunately, it was like $900,000 something dollars, right? Like $1 million. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Which industrial band originally composed the soundtrack for Hellraiser, only to have it replaced by a more traditional score? Throbbing Gristle, Coil, Nine Inch Nails, or Ministry?
Yep, Coil, that's for sure.
Not 9 Inch Nails.
No. They did a good job. 9 Inch Nails.
Yeah.
Trent Reznor did a good job with the soundtrack for Quake, though. That was pretty good.
Yeah, yeah. I like how the boxes said 9 Inch Nails logo on the
Yeah. He didn't know they were going to do that
for the nail gun.
That's right.
Okay, the design of the infamous puzzle box, the Lament configuration, was inspired by which real-world object? A Tibetan prayer wheel, a medieval reliquary, an ancient Roman sundial, or a Victorian puzzle box? I know.
I don't think any of those are correct.
Their answer was the Victorian puzzle box.
Okay. But it was actually done, at least I think what Clive mentioned was that he was inspired because of the Chinese puzzle boxes that his grandfather used to bring from his trips. Right. Yeah.
Yep. So they were wrong. That was the last one.
All right. Well, it was fun that they did that little trivia thing. And I hope that the people who got to get the most out of this screening were people who've never seen Hellraiser before, because that's always good to bring the movie to new people, virgin eyes who have never seen these sites before, right?
Yeah.
I didn't go because Wednesday I had a show that I was going to, and then Thursday I was preparing for an interview that I did, which resulted in me getting a new job on Friday. So I missed on that one.
People that I interviewed would prepare.
Yeah. Oh, okay. But I knew that I had the stuff at home that they were projecting, right? So I had the Quartet of Torment box with the 4K, which I've seen many times. Yeah. And I knew that they were going to have, it said at the bottom, it said, stay in your seat for exclusive interview with Doug Bradley after the show. And it's like, it turns out, it's Under the Skin from like the old Anchor Bay box set.
Exactly.
Which is already, it's like almost 20 years ago now.
Yeah, it's the one, I remembered it really well because it's the one where Doug Bradley is talking about the direction where Clive is telling him, do less. Yeah.
And also that the surgeon scene was never filmed. And then we found out that it was.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not with Doug Bradley himself. So it's understandable that he didn't remember that. So
yeah,
that's good stuff, though. I hope that people enjoy that. And it is an old movie, and it's a Fathom event. It wasn't a weekday, like you said. It was a Thursday, Wednesday and Thursday, I think. Yeah. So those are not usually days that people.
But at the same time, I think the Fathom events, they pretty much always happen on a weekday because they need the weekends for like new releases and stuff.
That's a good point. But I hope that in other places a lot of people went to see it. I know that one of our friends, Antoinette, she did mention she went to a screening, but there was also very few people there. It's a good thing and a bad thing. I mean, it's good that I'm going to say it's good because it means that a lot of people have already seen the movie and they're like, I'm not going to see it again.
I don't know. From the Tri-Cities, he said he went and saw it also.
Yeah. Okay.
Who lives over kind of by my mom.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. He said he said mostly it was people in the audience were all people that
have seen it
before. So he got to talk to them about it.
Oh, looks like this would attract a lot of people who are curious about it. I mean, everybody who already seen it already saw it, many times. If you're a big fan, I mean, this would be just a way of like throwing your cash at it and be like, I want to support this. I wish I had more energy and more time to have gone and see it, but I was busy preparing for that interview, and I had a previous Wednesday show that I was watching. So
it looked, and this is probably more on the projectionist, but it looked kind of dark to me.
Yeah.
Compared to what I'm used to, because I don't know, maybe I just have my TVs up really bright. But it looked kind of dark. But the sound was really good. It was nice seeing Hellraiser in the movie theater.
Yeah, with a good transfer.
Yeah.
Every time I saw Hellraiser in the theater, it's always been some scratched up film copy. At the end, you start seeing the little scratches and little hairs here and there and stuff. And it kind of gives it a more grindhouse feel. Of course, that was back in the day when they still were screening 35 millimeter prints in cinemas. And then after the 2000s and stuff, it's just started becoming all like digital files being projected onto the screen. So no more film. Yeah,
they used to have like cartridges that they would just plug in, right, to the
basically a hard drive, projector. Right?
Yeah,
DCP.
And nowadays they even just can stream them, and I don't even know if they get anything physical anymore.
Yeah. So did you notice the grain on it, apart from being a little dark, but the sound was good? Did you notice the detail was good?
It looked just like it does on the Quartet of Torment.
Oh, yeah, that's good. Yeah. Good stuff.
Except for being a little darker.
All right. Well, let us know your experiences if you went to see the Fathom Events screening. What was it like for you? And hopefully you had a good experience with the audience there. And let us know. Yeah.
Coming up next, and we've got this actually on the books, we're going to be talking about the Quartet of Torment, Disc 4, Hellraiser 4, Bloodline. With Pete Atkins will be joining us.
That's right. The unmistakable Pete Atkins. And that's going to be fun to talk about that troubled movie.
We've dragged him into our podcast to talk about Hellraiser Bloodline before.
Yeah.
Well, probably just an interview, and that's what came up. But, that was one of the things that came up. But
I'm waiting for the day that he comes in and say he's tired of talking about this sumbitchin' movie like Clive Barker did for one of those extras. Like, this is the last time I want to talk about this sumbitchin' movie. We need to do a special like Wishmaster commentary with him or something.
Yeah, well, we've had that in mind to do. And this is no fault of Pete's. It's just we just haven't put it together. Yeah, so we want to. I think that would be really fun to do that.
And then Jericho Squad 77 will return. The return of the murder hobos.
Yeah, we need to get. Well, you guys aren't murder hobos anymore, but we need to. You just had one incident, but yeah, we need to get that on the books too. Get a date for that.
Yeah, I think that campaign is slowly coming to a conclusion, I guess. So I've been stumbling through. When I look back at the episodes and what my character Chudavir has done, it just seems like he's been stumbling through a lot of stuff, but somehow he still manages to come up on top and solve the situation, thanks to a lot of the team members who keep bailing my ass from weird situations.
Well, I think that the characters that have high charisma should step up more and do the talking to other, because like when you lie to somebody, they always figure it out.
Right. Yes. Cause I've got like 3 charisma or something.
Yeah.
I'm a bookish librarian who doesn't know how to lie.
Yeah. Yep. And then the book Club of Blood will be In the Hills, the Cities. And, that'll be fun to visit. That's like like we've said before, that's one of Clive's most critically praised stories.
Please join us for this one. We're opening this now not just to patrons but also to our listeners group, right?
Tell us on the Discord or on the listeners group if you want to join us for that episode. We'll pencil you in.
Popolak walked and Popolak sang. I don't know how to say that. Is it Popolak or
probably?
Popolak?
Yeah, that's right.
Whatever. Yeah. Anyway, and this podcast, having no beginning, will have no end.
Thank you for joining us, and we hope you have subscribed or followed our podcast. You can find the Clive Barker Podcast wherever you find audio. Show notes for this episode, as well as news and reviews, can be found at our website at www.clivebarkercast.com. The Clive Barker Podcast, or BarkerCast, is an independent editorial podcast and blog that's not affiliated with Clive Barker or Seraphim Inc. This is a labor of love by the fans for the fans. You can chat with us on our Facebook BarkerCast listeners group, our Facebook page, Reddit, Blue Sky, or our Discord server. Have you already bought our book? The BarkerCast Interviews Occupy Midian, available in Amazon hardcover, Kindle, and Apple Books. Join our Patreon and become a patron to get access to exclusive stuff, pick an episode topic, or maybe join in the discussion. You can also buy a t-shirt in our TeePublic store. Just go to teepublic.com/stores/BarkerCast. Leave a voicemail for us on the SpeakPipe link on our blog, and we might put it in the episode. Opening and ending music generously provided by Ray Norrish.
Thanks for listening.